So Charles found himself locked in a small room. He didn't know what had happened. Just then, he saw a door. He approached it and tried to open it, but it was locked. There were 3 buttons. On one button, there was a circle. On the second one, a triangle. On the third, a square. Charles didn't know which one would unlock the door. Luckily, though, there was a note. It said 1248. Which button should he press to get out? You might have noticed that there's a clock right above the door. It's there for a reason. If you draw lines connecting 12, 4, and 8, you get a triangle. So Charles should press the button with the triangle on it. Esme was having a regular walk in the forest and got lost. She wandered around all night in the dark. Just after sunrise, she came upon a witch's house. She had nowhere else to go, so she walked in and asked the witch to send her home. The witch agreed, but it wasn't going to be that easy. 3 magical doors appeared, and Esme had to decide which one to go through. Behind the first door, nothing but a deep pit. Behind the second door was a shower of toxic liquid. Behind the third door was an open space with a vampire waiting for her. Which way should Esme go? Well, it's already past sunrise. The vampire would be gone already, hiding out somewhere dark. Esme should pick the third door. Maybe Esme could have just jumped over the pit. What do you think? Take a look at these pictures. Which blogger is richer? The second one. Look at the number of likes. She has 17,000, but the first one only has 7,000. One of Mr. Smith's sons, Jaden, was taken. Several hours later, Mr. Smith and his younger son David received a letter. The letter stated that if they wanted to see Jaden again, they should round up $1 million cash and take it to a little shack in the woods. Mr. Smith and David decided to do it, and David took the money into the woods alone. But it didn't go as planned. David said that halfway to the shack, someone approached him from behind, hit him, and stole the money. There was an investigation, and a detective asked David what the robber looked like. David said that he had dark hair and a red hoodie with a black logo on it. The detective immediately figured out who had taken Jaden. Can you? It was David. He said the robber approached him from behind, but somehow he still managed to remember some pretty specific details about the robber. Nah, he made it all up. Abigail wanted to buy her mom the best birthday present ever. The problem was she had 0 ideas. She decided to sneak into her mom's computer, go to her online shopping cart, and see what she had saved in there. When her mom left for work, Abigail sneaked into her home office and turned on the computer. Uh-oh, it required a password, and Abigail didn't know it. There was a sticky note attached to the keyboard. It was a clue. 1 apple, 2 orange, 2 kiwi, 1 lemon. Can you guess the password? Each number represents one letter of the word. A apple means the first letter, so A. Then we get P, R, I, and L. The password is April. Wow, her mom is really into fruit. A lady was shopping and left the store right after paying. A couple of minutes later, she returned. She had forgotten her wallet at the checkout counter. But the wallet was already gone. She called the police and reported the robbery. A detective interrogated the people who were in the store at the time. Sophia, the cashier, said she didn't see the wallet after the lady paid. Robert, a pilot who happened to be shopping there, said he didn't even see the wallet. He didn't have his glasses on. Mark, a landscaper, said he was in a different part of the store, so he didn't see anything. So, who stole the wallet? It was Robert, the pilot. He looks pretty blind without his glasses, so he's definitely not a pilot. Why would he lie about that? Unless… Amelia's brother, Neil, was a crazy scientist. In the past year, he had been working on a time machine. One day, he ran into Amelia's room and screamed. He'd done it! He'd invented a time machine and it totally worked! He said he had already tested it. He managed to talk to William Shakespeare, Princess Diana, and Sherlock Holmes. Amelia didn't believe him at all. Why was she so sure about it? Even if Neil had actually invented a time machine, he'd only have been able to talk to people who actually existed in real life. He said he talked to Sherlock Holmes. That guy's a character from a book and a TV show and a movie. Hey, that guy's everywhere. A woman called the police and reported that she had been robbed. She said she was in a restaurant bathroom fixing her makeup. Someone had come up from behind and hit her on the head, so she didn't know what the person looked like. The police sent her home and refused to fill out the report. Why? The woman was fixing her makeup, so she must have been looking in the mirror. She would have definitely seen someone sneaking up behind her. She lied and made up the whole story. Grab your detective hat and head over to Europe for this next one. Bill was traveling from Paris to Berlin by train. When the train got to Berlin, Bill wasn't on it. His friend reported him missing. The investigation began, and somewhere between Paris and Berlin, they found some interesting clues. There were footsteps that belonged to Bill, and a few feet away, his luggage. A detective found the person who had been sitting next to Bill on the train. His name was Sam. He said that Bill didn't have a ticket. When he saw the ticket inspector coming, he decided to make a run for it. He threw his suitcase off the train and then jumped. The detective didn't believe his story and arrested Sam for pushing Bill off the train. Why? Look at the direction the train was going. If Sam's story was true, the suitcase should be behind Bill's footsteps, not in front. Sam pushed Bill off the train, then threw his luggage off after. Mrs. Anderson came home from work in the middle of the day because she'd forgotten some important documents. When she went to the bedroom, she saw her husband lying on the bed. There was a paramedic beside him. Mr. Anderson was unconscious, and the doctor explained that he had been poisoned. Luckily, he had had time to call a paramedic before passing out. Mrs. Anderson immediately blocked off the door and called the police. She said there was a fake paramedic in her house who had poisoned her husband. How did she know? You might have noticed that when Mrs. Anderson arrived, there was no ambulance in the driveway. That's super suspicious. William was hit on the head and taken away. When he woke up, he found himself locked in a small room. He tried to open the door, but obviously it was locked. There was nothing in the room except for a wooden box with 12 bottles in it. There was an extra bottle on the floor next to it. William looked everywhere for the key but found nothing. After a bit of thinking, he noticed something. He managed to find the key. Where was it? Look at the bottle on the floor. It's exactly the same as the others, but for some reason, it's a bit lower. There must be a fake floor in the box. That's where the key is. Several women went missing in a small city. The police searched for months, but they couldn't find any trace of them. One day, a detective got lucky. He saw a hooded figure who matched their description, followed it, and found the place where they were being kept hostage. But when he busted in, there were just 3 women. They all said that they had been locked in this small room, but the detective knew that one of them wasn't a victim at all. The first woman said her name was Emery. She had spent around a year in that room. The second woman, Aria, said she had been there about 6 months. The third woman said her name was Brielle and that she had been locked up in there for about 2 months. Can you tell who's lying? Emery's lying. Look at her hair, she just had it dyed, but she's been there a year. Aria's hair is also dyed, but you can see her natural dark roots growing out. After years in college, Stephen came back to his hometown. He met up with a couple of his old friends, Dylan and Harry. Both of them said they're successful bloggers now. To prove it, they showed him screenshots from their most popular videos. Steve took a look at them and could tell that one of his friends was lying. Who's lying, and how did Steve know? Harry's lying. The number of views for his video is 2.1 million, but the number of likes is way higher, 4.5 million. That's impossible, or at least really suspicious. Harry probably photoshopped that screenshot. A super wealthy businessman, Mr. Carl Jenkins, has been taken and left locked up all alone in a dark room. His phone's almost run out of charge, so he can only write one message. He knows that someone might spy on his phone, so he decided to write a message with a code to a high school friend, John Smith, who runs a detective agency. He remembered that in high school, they would cipher messages to each other, so he used the same technique. The message was this. Can you guess what it means? Back in high school, they would shift one letter to the right each time they needed to write a secret code. To decipher it, you need to go one letter to the left. Their alphabet looks like this. The message is, "It was Eric." Having read the message, John knew immediately who his friend was talking about. Eric is the financial director of Carl's company. He had seen him once at a party a couple of years ago, so he knew what he looked like. John decided to investigate this case himself and help his friend out. He was sure there was something secret in Carl's mansion. Somehow he thought he knew that Eric would have the key to the mansion. The receptionist, Kelly, said he would always have lunch with different business partners at 2 p.m. sharp in his favorite cafe. When the detective drove up to the cafe, he saw Eric, the man with a beard, discussing business with someone. Either of them had a briefcase next to them, and the briefcases looked similar to each other. John was waiting for Eric and the second guy to leave the cafe. They went to the car, got in, and left both briefcases on the back seat. The detective followed them. They left the car in a parking lot, and luckily, they were careless enough to leave the car open. Which briefcase should the detective grab? The one that looks brand new. While they were walking to the car, the detective spotted a few scratches on the second man's briefcase. Both briefcases were locked with a cipher. Not to make the whole thing suspicious, the detective decided not to take it and cracked the code right in the car. Can you help him open the briefcase? The code is 000. The briefcase is brand new, and Eric probably didn't have time to set a code on it yet. Plus, Eric's the one who leaves the car open and unattended in a parking lot, so no wonder he uses a default code for his briefcase. Now that the detective has the key, he heads to the mansion. The front door isn't a problem with the key in hand. The study is upstairs. He's been there before, so he remembers the stairs leading up have a secret. If you step on the wrong stair, you'll instantly fall to the basement and won't be able to escape from it yourself. What step should John mind? It's the one with the slit in the middle. When you step on it, it opens, and you get into a dark room with bats and spiders. Yikes! Alright, John is finally at the study door, and Carl would always use buttons to open it. You've got only one try. There are 3 buttons, yellow, green, and blue. Which one should the detective choose if he knows that Carl is a big fan of painting? combination of blue and yellow gives green, so the door opens. Green light for our detective. He finally reaches the safe with top-secret documents that could help him find out the truth. Obviously, just like any other safe, it's locked with a code. It also has a warning. You can enter the code only once. If you hit the wrong code, the safe locks up forever. He's looking around for a hint, and voila! John is right. On the desk, he sees a note. It says "Secret Code" and has a combination of 3 digits: 3, something, and 1. The digit in the middle can't be seen since there's an ink stain right on it. Can you crack the code with one attempt only? The code is 371. The detective thought the code was used frequently, so the button must have been a bit worn out. He was right. Since he knew the beginning and the end, he only needed to find one more worn button. Alright, now he's got the top-secret documents he needed for his investigation. He looks through all the papers and finally finds something that looks like the document he actually needed. To take it as a hard proof, he needs to find one which is not fake. There are 4 copies. They look almost the same, but only one is real. Can you guess which one? It's the one in the upper left corner. It has a stamp, a signature, and it says "Agreement." The one next to it looks the same, but it has a spelling mistake. It says "Agreement." Other copies lack either a stamp or a signature. So the detective takes a closer look at this agreement and sees something about a painting bought in an auction. He suddenly understands that his friend Carl was taken so that someone could sneak into his mansion and grab that super expensive painting. He's looking at the wall with all the paintings Carl collected and realizes that no painting is missing. There are as many nails in the wall as there are paintings. Still, there's something strange about one of them. Can you spot what's wrong here? Even though all the paintings are present, there's one that lacks a frame. According to the agreement, the painting has been recently bought, and an art dealer helped Carl pick it. The expert was an honest man, and he helped Carl make sure all the other paintings in his collection were real. This time, the painting turned out to be nothing but a copy. Why did the expert suggest that Carl buy it? Although the painting cost nothing, its frame was a beautiful and expensive piece of art. The one who grabbed it definitely knew that. Now it's all clear. John has to find both Carl and the precious frame. He goes outside, trying to deduce where the person who took Carl went. Carl is looking at all the tracks on the ground. He needs to follow one of them to understand where to look for Carl. Where should he go? He's got to follow the tracks going to the left. There are 3 sets of tracks here. The first belonged to John's car. The second set belongs to a 2-wheel vehicle, and since the tracks are really thin, they were left by a bike. It seems impossible to take someone somewhere on a bike, so these must belong to a mail carrier who comes every day to bring the letters. The last set of tracks definitely belongs to a large car, so John should follow it. He's lucky and there are no turns, so he's just going straight. Half an hour later, he sees something like a castle. He drives up to it and he sees 3 moats in front of him. Here's the first one, a row full of metal stakes. How can John jump over it safely? There's a small hot air balloon nearby. John has to untie it and light the lamp to take off. Since the next moat is on fire, John thinks it's unsafe to fly over it because the air balloon doesn't fly high enough and the lamp doesn't have enough oil to go on for long. Still, he managed to cross the moat with fire easily. How did he do it? He took the sand from the air balloon's ballast and sprinkled it on the fire, extinguishing it. The last moat was filled with scalding hot lava. It took John some time to figure out how to cross it, but he managed to do it safely. How? There were a lot of stones around him. The lava torrent wasn't deep at all, so throwing stones at it, he made a tiny path to hop on. The castle was rather small inside, so the hardest thing was to actually get into it. When he entered the hall, John saw 3 doors. Above the doors, there was a sign. It said, "One of the doors leads to a labyrinth no one ever escaped. One of the doors is the exit. If you enter it, you'll have to cross all the 3 moats all over again. One of the doors has what you're looking for." When John looked at the doors, he knew immediately where his friend was. Which door did he choose? The handles were made of shiny metal, which looks cool but gathers all the fingerprints. The only door with fingerprints is the one on the left. John opens the door and sees his friend. Carl rushes out of that dark room, and while heading to the exit, they spot a few frames. Which one is Carl's? The rectangular one. The painting was rectangular, and the 2 other frames are square. The 2 friends get out of the castle, get in the car, and head to the police department. There, an officer's waiting for them. They have 3 suspects who could have possibly taken the exquisite frame. Carl and John enter the room separately. Still, they choose the same person. Who did they choose? The man on the right. Carl chooses him because it's the art expert. John chooses him because he saw him with Carl having lunch. Wow, seems like this expert's not going to work with Carl ever again.